So, hi. I went out from the meeting, as I described in the last video, to learn as much as I could from as many different places as I could, and I was quite happy to avoid too much television. One of the things they said that they felt was like a waste of time, in the sense that it didn't tell you, it was government controlled. It wouldn't tell you the really important things that you needed to know, that I should concentrate perhaps more on listening to a variety of radio stations, which I did, from various countries on shortwave, which I used to sit and do quite often. But there was all sorts of ways of learning, and of course when you're at school is certainly a source of learning. So what did I learn at grammar school that's now useful? Well, I learned a lot of maths, which really the maths, the sums and the like that I learned in junior school and infant school were very useful. I suppose the algebra was basic algebra is useful. But the higher stuff, perhaps not so. Interesting in biology, I learned a few things that are perhaps interesting. I remember the one time the teacher decided to divide us so that we were boy girl boy girl. He said that so that we wouldn't arse about. Well, anyway, so we had to we each had a microscope, and we had to prick our finger to get a drop of blood and put it onto this slide, in order that we could look at our own blood through the microscope. They gave us like a wooden stick which had like a needle sticking out of the end of it, if you can imagine, so you could hold the wood, and the idea was to prick your left index finger, he told us, because you didn't want to make it, if you made it sore, you didn't want to then have to write up the thing with the sore finger. And you think, well, what if you're left-handed? Huh? No thought of it. But anyway, I write right-handed, so it wasn't a direct problem. So we had to light the Bunsen burner and sterilize the end of the pin part, just with the quick flick across the top of the flame first, and then prick your finger. And while I'm thinking, right, okay, I suppose I've got to actually do this. And then the girl next to me said, would I prick her finger for her, because she couldn't bring herself to do it. And all sorts of things. This is like one of those moments that you remember, obviously, for the rest of your life. It's one of these wonderful and scary moments, like so there she is with her, and all you can see really is this finger of this girl you don't even really know. She was in the class, but you didn't really know her. So, well, there's no way you can say no, because you've got to prick your own anyway, so you might as well start on hers, I suppose. But somehow that seems a more precious thing to do. You didn't want to mess that up more than you didn't want to hurt yourself. That was far more important. Anyway, courage in hand, to take hold of her hand. It's like this way, isn't it? And then so you have to sort of lean in like this, don't you? And well, do it, isn't it? While thinking of what you're doing. And well, anyway, I made a reasonable job of it. I managed to get about 1.5 spots of blood. You had to wipe the slide with a piece of cotton wool dipped in alcohol. So quickly did that, and she put her finger on and got the spot of blood. Wonderful. And then of course I had to do my own. well, it's one of those things that you know that you've just got to do it and do it then. So what I have to say, that was harder to do, but well, I managed it. I managed to get about 3 drops come out of my own. I must have hit it that bit harder. Alcohol on the swab. Look at me blood. I can't remember much about it beyond that, because I suppose my head was full of this little incident with the girl next to me, and I don't think I spoke to her or anything, or even hardly looked at her afterwards, because you just couldn't. Utterly ridiculous, but one of those moments that you just you just remember. So what I learned from biology was that I can't really remember a lot of biology. It's just that one incident that stays in mind. Well, there's a second one, and that is we were asked to dissect a worm. They'd killed the worm somehow with some gas, I think, and you had to cut the worm down and then draw what was inside it and so on. And there was a lot of fuss of some of the girls absolutely not wanting to do this and so on, but the one next to me was quite happy to do this, get the scalpel out and cut down a worm. It's a funny subject, isn't it? Really, to give children biology when you think about it, really. But I suppose it's important. Well, anyway, I managed to do mine all right. Not a pleasant thing, though. It's not got the same feeling about it at all. The pricking your finger and looking at your blood and finding, of course, it looks like everybody else's. That felt like an achievement. Cutting down the worm and joint is just, I don't care what it looks like inside, to be honest. Though I do remember that it's sort of nearly all digestive system, because it just eats a load of dirt and there's not much nutrient in it really, and it has to filter through masses of dirt to get a little tiny bit of nutrient out of it. And I remember it has a saddle, and so I learned something, I suppose, but it just leaves a yuck taste, doesn't it, really? The other thing, I suppose, perhaps is relevant in respect of how things are these days is later on then we had to, the teacher gave us a book to read about the sexual reproduction of the rabbit, and we had to write about it. He didn't normally, the teachers would stand at the front and tell you about things, and then you might look at little references in the book, but he didn't tell us about this at all. He gave us the book to read, because I suppose he wouldn't, he was embarrassed to do it, I suppose. So anyway, we did this and wrote about it, and then a bit later on we went on to doing the same thing for human beings. It was written in the book, and we had to draw pictures of the insides of women and men, and that was actually, I suppose, the extent of our sexual education at school. I suppose this was typical, I assume, in those days. I imagine it isn't anymore. That was it. Until perhaps the sixth form, I seem to remember there was a bit of relationship talk and a little bit of things to do with that relationships in under religion, which just brings me to mind to one particular incident that in religious education there was some minister or something that had come from Africa somewhere, and he was black, and I can remember him saying about how the English had brought their religion to Africa, and what a wonderful religion it was, he said, in a sort of how grateful they were. But he wanted to just show us how Africans weren't different from us, and how the colour didn't come off his skin, and we all had to touch his hand and feel that the black doesn't come off. Now this might sound utterly ridiculous. Well, it is utterly ridiculous then, but it just seemed a bit, you know, well, nobody said it did. It's a bit like nobody ever said the world was flat. You don't have to deny it. We never thought it was. We never thought the black came off black people, and the white doesn't come off white people, does it? Nobody. It was just so odd at the time, but I can assure you it's true. What I do remember is thinking that his hand was sort of like slippy. I don't know what I was expecting, but it was sort of like as though it had been polished. But of course, well, on that point, I'll stop. Bye.